Hi, Ramesh.
Hey,
So, we're going to talk about some interesting questions on computational imaging. Okay. Um, let me ask. First question would be something that's rather simple, which is so you're, as I understand, professor at MIT Media Lab, running the computational imaging lab there. Tell me a little bit more about that lab and what it does, and some of the more interesting things happening in your lab.
sure. I mean, our camera culture group at MIT Media Lab, our goal is to make invisible visible, whether it's inside our bodies with new types of medical devices, diagnostic devices, or around us, so cameras that can see around corners, or beyond. How can we use the information that's available online to create new types of maps? So making invisible visible inside our bodies, around us, and beyond.
Interesting. Um, you know, we as Lux Capital have invested in a lot of startups that have to do with imaging and computational imaging, whether it's 3D scanning, image recognition, computational imaging broadly for homes and offices, and all the way to the satellites. But obviously, you're familiar with and look at a lot of startups doing interesting things. You're an advisor to many startups. What are some of the most interesting things that you've seen in the computational imaging world coming
Right.
out of startups?
Yeah, I mean, computational imaging you can think of as part software, part hardware. And I think they're seeing fantastic innovations in along both axes. On the software axis, of course, signal processing, machine learning, computer vision has spawned a whole bunch of companies. And on the hardware axis, by using new types of optics or lighting, we have seen companies deal with interaction or robotics or medical devices and so on. So I think finally we are seeing a fusion or co-design, I would say, of hardware and software. And I think it's a really beautiful exploding space, and we are just at the beginning of it.
But you think in those startup space, is there something happened over the last few years that has made these innovations possible? I mean, is it people generally talk about, hey, the cost of hardware has come down, computational cycles are cheap. Are those things directly relevant to imaging, or something else has happened? Some deep learning, deep mining, AI algorithms have been possible that just weren't possible a while ago.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the asymptotic trends you talked about of cost and speeds are helping everyone. But I think when it comes to imaging, some amazing things have happened. I mean, when I was doing my PhD, I never thought in my lifetime we'll be able to take a camera and move it around and create 3D models, or take a picture of something and recognize them. And we all wrote papers about it and so on. But certain things have clicked, as you mentioned. Amazing advances in computer vision and machine learning have really come together, and some ambitious, bold strategies are actually working out. And this is beautiful. It's amazing how that has come around. And as the quality of sensors has improved, we started in the beginning mimicking something that's as good as human vision, but now we have completely surpassed that with 3D cameras, time of flight cameras, thermal imaging, light field cameras, and so on. I think we can really get to a stage where we have, Hawkeye vision, snake vision, and well beyond that.
Interesting. Interesting. What are some of the most interesting things that large companies are working on? Google has all kinds of, reportedly 400 people working on imaging of one sort or the other. You have Facebook that is obviously auto classifying all my images and, tagging my mom without me even realizing that she's been tagged. You have Facebook that acquired Oculus
Right.
and the whole VR euphoria around that.
Right.
You're an advisor to some of those companies. I'm sure you can't talk about a whole bunch of things, but what you can talk about, what is most exciting in your mind about from Apple to Google to Facebook to whatever
Right.
that's happening in the imaging world?
Yeah, it's funny because 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we used to say, "Hey, does your company have an internet strategy?" And then we started saying, "Do you have a mobile strategy?" And more recently, we were talking about, "Do you have a data strategy?" And now I think companies need to ask, "Do you have a image strategy?" And companies like Dropbox are actually becoming huge image companies, and other ones you mentioned like Facebook and Google, of course, have huge imaging teams, and companies that typically you wouldn't think of have to deal with images, such as Yelp and TripAdvisor, have started hiring people that are focusing on imaging. Similarly, on the hardware side, companies that used to just sell electronics have cameras embedded in almost everything, whether it's toys or TVs or cars. And so they have to learn about their imaging strategy as well. So I think we are just at the beginning of this amazing revolution in making sense of the world through vision.
Interesting. So, I always talk about publicly that there are these platforms of the future that we should think about, hardware platforms. The VR is a platform. Self-driving cars is a platform. Drones is a platform, right? A lot of IoT stuff is platform. And one thing that unifies all of them, interestingly enough, is camera and imaging, right? All of these camera is like the ultimate sensor that's capturing all the information that can be processed. And camera doesn't just mean obviously 2D camera, but depth cameras and infrared cameras and all kinds of sonars and whatnot, but some kind of an image-based recognition. And utilizing that information to do interesting stuff. Security, but also, immersing you in a reality that may not actually exist,
right,
to, of course, taking your hands off of a wheel so you can drive down 101.
Right.
As you think about that, are there elements of imaging that you feel are the holy grails that both first academics and researchers and then entrepreneurs should be working on?
Right.
That kind of too obvious that, hey, without that, this will take a while.
Yeah. I mean, it's very true. You said, imaging is becoming as important as computing. And, we think of computers have really are part of our lives when they become invisible. And I think the same thing is going to happen with cameras. They'll be in so many things, we will stop calling it a device with a camera. It's just a device that has that intelligence built into it. And for ourselves, if you think of all the senses, the one that's highest bandwidth and arguably provides the most information is the visual sense. And so what is interesting is that even every other field, whether it's sensors or memory or compression, now learning, they use imaging as their test ground. They say, unless it works for imaging, we are not successful yet, right? And so that's kind of satisfying. So I think there was a trend when people thought about, hey, we must learn typewriting. And then people said, hey, we must learn coding. And I think that very soon people say, hey, we must learn how to play with images as a basic skill when you're in school.
Interesting. One last question. You are obviously professor and you teach many courses that are ventures related. You teach imaging ventures, health ventures. These are all classes that are around technology and how do you convert them into startups. I've been to many of your classes before. You've also started companies. iNetra, which is in low cost, eye prescription wear and then health diagnostics using eye as the primary system, and then LensBricks, which I happen to be an investor in computational imaging. What are some of the challenges in entrepreneurship in imaging? You've faced them,
right,
multiple times. Talk about them.
Yeah, it's difficult to say if there are any specific challenges in imaging. I would say it's such an obvious field where we're going to see tremendous growth. There are tens of millions of people who start using a camera every month who have never used a camera in their life, right? So we are living in this unbelievable world. The way people thought about internet in the mid-90s or mobile in the over the last 10 years, we're going to see this amazing adoption of camera in people's lives, and people are becoming very comfortable with video. So I would say if there are any challenges, it's that some of the efforts are very siloed. As you know, if you think about machine learning or deep learning, the data sets are owned by large organizations. So that makes it challenging for academics or small companies to get started. If you think about hardware, whether it's optics or sensing, a lot of these solutions are also very siloed. It's difficult to create tens or hundreds of them. You only have to create millions of them. So those are some challenges there. And finally, the talent itself. I think we have grown up with coding or programming as the key skill, but when you think in images, you're thinking in 3 dimensions. And that is not part of a traditional educational system. So actually there are very, very few really good scientists, engineers, entrepreneurs who understand how to make the best sense of images and video. So I would say data, hardware, and talent are three big challenges.
So you're at the
Imaging
MIT
ventures.
Media Lab,
Right.
and the MIT Media Lab is renowned for bringing people from multiple, departments to work together. In imaging, especially, as we talk about drones looking down, satellites looking down, cameras in our home, whether it's drop cams of the world or otherwise, dash cams, right? It's self-driving cars that are using all of this. What is the kind of if undergrads are interested in the future of imaging generally, hopefully more than the Snapchats and Meerkats of the world, though they have amazing things to do in there as well. But when they think about capturing amazing amount of information, capturing the energy, sort of to say, in the room, as one of our common friends, used to say, and then analyzing that and understanding that, and if extracting useful insights out of that, what would you tell undergrads to study? Should they study optics, mechanics, computer science? I mean, there's no imaging major, so to say, right?
Exactly.
Or are you saying you have to do a freaking PhD before you can do imaging?
Yeah, I think it's a very fast moving field, and I mean, physics is the mother of everything. Physics is critical, and a lot of the skills about optics and sensing can be acquired through online courses. I think the part where you really have to go to school and learn is computer vision and machine learning. I think this is not something you can just learn by watching online courses, and you have to really get your hands dirty and feel it really tangible, because it comes through intuition that you build over time. So I would imagine optics and sensing. When it comes to optics, also, if you're doing something really fascinating, you need to have optical bench experience. So for that, you may have to take applied optics classes. When it comes to sensors, of course, you can spend all your life thinking about the electronics of it, but that could be part of a general curriculum. But I think when it really comes to the computation, I think we need to be very, very hands-on and take multiple years of training.
Interesting. One last question, and this is an unfair one. So you're based in Boston. I used to be in Boston. You have at least one company, iNetra, if I'm not mistaken, headquartered in Boston. Right. You have another company which is headquartered in San Francisco, Lensbricks.
Right.
East versus West. Who's the best?
I think they're all the best. I think
you can't give me the politically correct answer. Come on.
It's your state of mind. I think wherever you are, and I think every place has its own benefits and challenges. And I think if you're passionate enough and really want to bring great ideas into the world, you will thrive where you are.
I actually agree with you. Obviously, I have investments on both coasts. What I do find is, and this is maybe just a commentary on top, which is, there's amazing innovations that come out of universities like MIT around imaging and otherwise. I think we've talked today about this idea of you have to build solutions for people, right? At the end of the day, when I buy this camera, this iPhone, I bought it. It has great camera. It has a lot of optical stabilization on it. It has algorithms on it. The native app is great for photography. But I don't know exactly what optics went into it, what kind of MEMS-based technologies may or may not have been used to stabilize this image. But I like the end result. I like the end solution. Right? And, I find that, we can do a better job teaching students who are coming out of universities working on imaging to think about that, to think about the end solutions, the end products, think about there's no real platform without a product. I often find people who are working in imaging as entrepreneurs want to be the platform, right? We're this platform with this API or with this developer network, but the end result needs to do more on, we need more work on that. And obviously you're in a great place to do that.
I should emphasize that, which is to get that magical seamless experience with imaging. We are not there at all. And there's so many underlying fundamental problems we have to solve, just fundamental technologies, whether it's low light or blur or being able to see through something. There's so many fundamental problems we have to solve. So just because we can, post pictures on Snapchat with a camera that comes in our phone, I think we're going to look back 5 years from now and say, wow, how did we put up with that?
Interesting. Well, hopefully we won't have to put up with that. Hopefully we'll have better cameras. Thank you so much, Ramesh. And thank you all for joining in, whoever was watching this.
Thanks.